All too often, when you start dating in middle age, having finally discovered someone you consider special, you also discover there is something about this person which raises the hackles of your best friends or, more importantly, your children, growing or grown up. Fiona divorced the violent, paranoid schizophrenic who had been her husband. And like the rest of us, she went back onto the meat market in a quest to meet Mr. Right, and she did find him, or so she thought. Ray was kind, gentle, considerate, attentive and loving, everything she had lacked in her former marriage. So what if he was a short-ass bloke who lived 200 miles away and could only make it over to see her every third or fourth weekend? Americans think nothing of travelling such distances to meet up. Besides, she and Ray could fill the empty spaces by keeping in touch via the internet. She christened him Mr. Nice Guy. The months passed. She was happy, very content, and looking towards a bright future when Ray could live with her full time. Even her kids had started calling him Dad. Then one weekend, she opened her email and her world of happiness evaporated in an instant. This tale is one of betrayal that comes from failing to learn to live with oneself. Ray and Fiona had initially met one another via a chat room on the internet. Internet chats became phone calls, which became visits, which then became a passionate love affair. In spite of the fact she was a good 4 inches taller than him, Fiona was head over heels in love. Ray was just so different from any other man she had ever known. However, she sensed Ray never really seemed to believe that she really loved him for what he was. Eventually, he confessed to being riddled with self-doubt and angst about his height. At just 5'1", he wasn't the tallest guy in the world, and he had a very real fear of being ridiculed for being seen with a woman taller than him. But with the help of chat rooms and messaging systems on the internet, Ray had found plenty of women out there who didn't care about his height. Meeting and chatting to women who accepted him as he was via the internet became like a drug. And although it sounds silly to those of us who live with our inadequacies, once tasted, he found it hard to stop and wanted more, even though he'd seemingly met the woman of his dreams. The problem was that her acceptance wasn't sating his needs. Fiona read the contents of the email she'd found in her inbox that weekend with growing horror. "Hi Fiona," the first began. "You don't know me, but I'm Mickey, Ray's stepson." Stepson? What stepson? She didn't even know he was married, let alone had a stepson. Obviously, he did, and said stepson had taken it upon himself to forward emails sent received by Ray from 2, 3 other women he'd been seeing at weekends, besides Fiona. In content, they were almost identical to those she had received from him in the past. They clearly and explicitly revealed his supposed undying love for each of these women, that he was regularly visiting them and to each was promising to live permanently with them and start a new life of love and domestic bliss. Judging from the replies these women had sent him, each thought they had met the one. Fiona was devastated. The guy had obviously been stringing her and the others along. The email sent by Mickey was soon joined by others from Ray's assorted lady friends who, having learned about each other, now wanted to know more about how they'd been hoodwinked by him too. To confuse matters further, stepson Mickey had also shown his mother the evidence of Ray's philandering, and she included herself in the flurry of emails between the aggrieved parties. All 5 women, and all of whom were significantly taller than Ray, compared notes and began to plot their revenge on the man who had so ruthlessly betrayed their affections. Not surprisingly, for Mr. Nice Guy, and all the women agreed he was nice, there could be no forgiveness. Ray got thrown out of his marital home. He bombarded Fiona and the others with telephone calls and emails, pleading to be given a second chance, but to no avail. Neither she nor they would be seeing him again. They had all been taken for such fools, and their respective relationships for him were definitely over for good. Finding out that he wasn't a hideous, two-headed monster just because he was a short bloke was an important journey for Ray to undertake, one which successfully countered his long-held negative beliefs about himself. That there were tall women out there who wanted to see and be seen with him gave him a much-needed acceptance of what he had believed to be his greatest burden in life. However, because of his deep-rooted insecurity, he just couldn't resist getting that acceptance fix again and again. What he should have done was delve deep into his own psyche to take a long, hard look at himself and his insecurities. If they weren't a problem for others, then why were they still a problem for him? Only by dealing with this issue would he avoid messing up other people's lives in the future. Whatever they may be, sharing our innermost fears and foibles with another can make you think you've cracked the problems rattling around in your head. As Ray found out the hard way, whatever anyone else may think about you and who you are, if it's still a problem for you, acceptance by others doesn't resolve anything. You can only overcome a negative about yourself when you've learned to accept and love yourself for who you are, warts and all. For his sins, Ray had to learn this through the actions of a smart 12-year-old who somehow had stumbled across his stepfather's antics and to protect his mum set out, brilliantly in my view, to bring them to an abrupt end. So never underestimate the brilliance of stepchildren with computers, especially if said children don't like you or your behaviour.